Yeah. Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 224. To give people time to join the stream, and yes, I apologize for being a couple of minutes late, I'm going to start us off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need. To wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God's sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heed and folly? Bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come down to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No age with give or wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all of thankless years.
And that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard please go and check out Chris Card's YouTube channel if you like good music. Good evening to my guests. Before I move on, I'll just say to the people in the chat, I'm sorry we were 5 minutes late today, and that was entirely my fault. I was having computer issues earlier, and so I only sent these good chaps the link literally about 5 minutes before we went on air. But anyway, good evening to my guests, Mitch, Aaron Hook, and AI. As always, I'm going to start us off by asking the guests if they have a first subject they want to bring up, and I'm just going to go clockwise. So, Mitch, did you have a first subject for this evening?
I don't think much has happened this week, but I will say is that hour long? Oh, is that 45-minute long interview Dominic Cummings had with Sky News, and it's a good interview to listen to if you want to look up. Okay, what's the true nature of power in Westminster and Whitehall? Because it's like that Westminster famous exchange where they're going about how the ministers and the MPs are the ones with actual power. The ones with actual power are more the private secretaries and the civil service. For example, someone like Rachel Reeves doesn't actually hold the power. It'll be someone like her secretary that connects her to the Bank of England, for example. And Dominic Cummings will spend a bit of time because the thing about Dominic Cummings is he is kind of a containment in it. And he pretty much said so like a few years back when he said he doesn't like Farage and he thought that Brexit would defang any sort of right wing resurgence in this country. However, I'm generally getting the gist that with Dominic Cummings, he's probably surrendered to the idea that he's going to be helping Farage just because the Tories and Labour are that bad. And Boris really snuffed it. Like that one in a lifetime opportunity for the Tories to take up a mantle and pretty much rule for like another generation, and they screwed up. So Dominic Cummings is pretty much. So yeah, Dominic Cummings was saying about how Starmer's put himself in the same position as Sunak in terms of promising the moon, but not being in a position to actually deliver because he refuses to leave. He refuses to repeal the Human Rights Act and leave the ECHR, which, you can't enforce immigration law and then still be signing up to the European Convention of Human Rights. I think like the only other thing Dominic Cummings was saying was, what was it? Essentially, he's like, I think he's probably also because he said also and I mean everyone else can corroborate me on this one, that talk of civil war and other dark scenarios, you'll say, is just prevalent. Like everyone's just in the mood of thinking, well, look, everyone hates the politicians and looks upon them with disgust. And given that we've voted against mass immigration for decades and nothing gets done, it wouldn't be hyperbolic to say what happened with Southport might replicate, but be be 1,000 times worse.
Sorry, Mitch, I didn't realise. Had you finished?
Yeah. I thought I was disconnected or something for a second.
No. That was entirely my fault. I didn't think you'd finished speaking. Yeah, look, I mean, I certainly saw the Cummings interview, although I haven't listened to all of it. I'm wondering if AI or Aaron had anything to say about that interview.
I did listen to it today. I had a feeling it might come up on tonight because it was it was quite an interesting interview. One thing that's quite interesting, and again he sort of hits home the point, is he says that Westminster at one point it was a dynamic place of good governments, and he actually says like the best government in his mind was during the Napoleonic Wars, particularly under William Pitt, where you had this where you had basically you had these experts who were genuine experts in their field, and you had like if they need like a sort of advice on procurement of goods, say they'll get like a renowned dockmaster from Plymouth to come up and consult with the government and things like that. You actually had this sort of genuine trade taken seriously, um, all aspects of a functional state was taken seriously and wasn't just parcelled off to some quango in an office somewhere. And then, of course, you look at it today, and one thing that he repeatedly says is that these people aren't serious. The actual the politician stuff, the politics show is obviously like he calls it a TV show, and that the actual, as Mitch says, the government is done by the civil service, and various branches within the civil service. But also, and this is the problem, is because it's not dynamic, and effectively it is, there aren't dynamic and competent figures at large within. They end up being the last people to realize or to see change. And whenever whenever people are moving one direction, Westminster are the last people to actually see it. And I mean, that's kind of a self-evident thing for years now, but it's become more and more obvious. And I think with the Civil War comment, he basically says that at the end of it, what would happen? I mean, it wouldn't be like armed conflicts as such, but you would have more no-go areas. You'll have areas where total law and authority break down, and there's no way to enforce it. I can see that happening. I mean, it already happens now in certain communities of aliens in our cities and towns in England, where the police are too afraid, or they have some sort of compromise agreement. And a legacy of that sort of style of policing sort of comes from this whole Stephen Lawrence case, and I forgot the name of the report that came out of it, but where you basically had policing where thank you, Mitch, where you had policing which is done basically where they have to tiptoe around organized like an organized vanguard in these alien communities. And that's the reason why a lot of the Pakistani rape gangs have gone on for so long. Is why there's a lot of violent gang-related crimes with Afro-Caribbeans in London, and this is just going to get worse. And I also think, as we've noticed, and and I no doubt Cummings would notice, more and more people who are the majority are because of the flood of a ridiculous amount of foreigners into this country, more and more people will become quite racially conscious and group conscious when you have so many groups existing on this island who are foreign. And that itself is a problem for liberals. That's a problem for any attempts of integration, which I don't think has even been thought now or even attempted. And so I think what Cummings was getting at is very much true. I think there will be a breakdown. I think there will be. I don't want to say it'll go as far as like balkanization, but I think it will be. I think it could just be series of riots, maybe even like regional revolts or just total breakdown in law and order. Maybe something similar to what we saw in Northern Ireland, but on a sort of grander, more complex scale.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. Aaron, what were your thoughts on this if you saw it?
I've not seen the whole thing yet, but I did see clips of it, and I wasn't particularly surprised by what Dominic Cummings said, because it's generally the sort of thing he's been saying for quite some time. I was, as Mitch mentioned in his comment you had up just, that the journalist interviewing him didn't try to cut him up or do it a gotcha. The journalist actually sitting there listening to him, asking, at least from the clips I saw, reasonably perceptive questions, which, as Mitch says, is a really breath of fresh air. when it comes to the idea of a civil war, I do think AI is right. There's going to turn out, if we do ever have one, I think it's highly unlikely. I think all the talk about civil war is a bit hysterical, to be honest. But if it ever does take place, it will be far more like Northern Ireland than, say, anything on the lines of, I don't know, Bosnia, which I've heard some people mention. It would very much be more like the troubles in Northern Ireland than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I mean, what you've got to look at, of course, is that Britain has deliberately created these ghettos in various cities and parts of cities of people who are entirely alien to the real people of Britain. And that's been done deliberately by successive governments. And we can already see that there are, as AI was saying, there are assorted, pretty much no-go areas in parts of British cities. And I see no prospect of that getting less serious. I mean, as Morgoth pointed out on Twitter today, 2,000 men crossed the channel today, just today. I think it was it 2,000 or 200? Let me double check.
I think it was 2,000. I think.
I think it was 2,000.
Yeah, 2,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, sorry, 8,000. It was 1,000. 1,000 men crossed the English Channel today. Illegal immigrants, all of whom will be allowed into the country. And it's just done on purpose. You get people posting, oh, the government should use the Royal Navy to stop them, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm quite sure that even the shrunken and dwarfed Royal Navy of 2025 could still stop little dinghies coming across the channel if they were ordered to do so. But they've got to be ordered to do so, and the government has no interest in doing that. No interest whatsoever.
I was going to say Cummings. Sorry, Mitch. Sorry, Mitch. Go ahead.
I was going to say Cummings mentioned how stupid Starmer is in saying 1 minute he wants to shut down the votes, but at the same time, Ross Sunak, he says he doesn't want to reverse all the human rights laws. That if we were, like, the thing is, the Human Rights Act and other stuff like that, we would have to go against some of the provisions of that, especially the human ECHR and stuff, in order to off back the votes, so to speak. But I said, there's no advertising among the Labour Party to get rid of that. So
not a chance. Not a chance.
I mean, as I stated in the previous episode, in a hypothetical, if we did that, if we went against ECHR rules, number one, it's non-enforceable. Like on a physical level, it's non-enforceable. And even if they went to the UN, let's just say they went to the UN and tried to pull what they did with Netanyahu, international arrest warrant to the UN or thing. Well, because of our Security Council membership, we could just veto. And so when I said in the previous stream, technically we could do Gaza-like tactics in Londonderry or somewhere like that. We could, in theory, we could, and there's nothing anyone in the international community, unless they decided to invade us, there's nothing.
No one's going to do that. Yeah, no one's going to invade us over this. Britain needs to just abrogate the ECHR treaty and leave the European Court of Human Rights. We need to do those two things, which Britain is perfectly entitled to do. And as you rightly say, AI, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, Britain can veto anything the UN says that we don't like, which is why it was ridiculous, for example, that Starmer gave away the British and Indian Ocean territory, because the UN wanted us to, because Britain could just have vetoed it. The UN from time to time says France should get rid of various places in the Pacific and all the rest of it. And of course, the French don't give a shit, because like us, the French are permanent members of the Security Council. And if the UN really starts nagging, they can just veto it.
Yeah, and also some people in chat are bringing up the RNLI and all this. Now, the RNLI, years and years ago.
Hey, can I just interrupt you for a second? Adam's in the chat. Adam, and I did, of course, send you a link. So if you'd like to join, feel free. Sorry, AI, carry on.
Yeah, now, years and years ago, my parents, because we lived in Cornwall, were used to donate quite, a fair amount in donations to the RNLI. A lot of people did. It was a very, very popular thing to do, especially in coastal communities, because it's very important,
When I used to live in Bognor Regis with my father, we used to always give money to the people collecting for the lifeboats.
Yeah. Not now.
Yeah,
Not
people
now.
don't.
And
I've understood that.
when the whole small boat stuff happened, and the RNLI were helping them out. Well, I had this argument because there was in my local town, they were out, like looking, for donations, and I said, well, we used to. I mean, I used to give. Probably about 10 years ago, I think I actually gave I put money in the pot sort of thing for outside one of the shopping centres for the RNLI, and I said so a few years ago now. Oh yeah, I wouldn't do it. And they said, well, why? And I said, well, because you're helping, these aliens into our country who are effectively, you don't even know who they are. They could be terrorists, they could be fighters, because a lot of them come from quite a few come from Iran, come from Iraq, places like that. And their argument, or the argument by one of the volunteers was, oh yes, but when you're in the ocean, it's not about nationality, it's about a human need for help. And I was like, well, and this came actually
not in the situation where you're being literally invaded every day, which the Britain is in today. Then I think that changes.
I said that is just that's a twisted logic in on itself, because if you're when you're under siege by a hostile group, which they are, they're from hostile countries to
Yes.
European civilization. And so I had this back and forth with them, but of course it was like, obviously this person was some paid up liberal halfwit, so there was no point arguing any further. But today I am told that the RNLI went out to rescue one of the dinghies, but at the expense of a kayak with English people in it.
What a surprise, AI. Why doesn't that surprise me at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was that situation where the Royal Navy escorted a bunch of Baltimore migrants, and they had to just sort of Dunkirk naval parade, I believe it was, to mark the 75th anniversary. Actually, no, 75th, 85th.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me. It's like, there's two-tier policing in Britain, and it is obvious and increasingly obvious to even normies that if you come from an immigrant minority group in Britain, you are policed far less hard than if you are a white Anglo-Celtic British person, i.e. an indigenous British person. This is becoming increasingly obvious to more and more people.
Yeah, it's like you've got that Robert Jenrick situation where he went to where was it in London? I can't remember where it was in London, but basically it's because some of our guys were saying about how all the people he happens to come across in terms of like not paying their fares all happens to be white, and it's like, well, first of all, I won't be in the mood to chastise people for not paying their fares these days, because you go, the way our society is governed is basically if you follow all the rules as a tax-paying Englishman, you're just taken for a mug. Meanwhile, all the migrants, they can do whatever they want. I mean, there have been times where I've been on a bus and there's a couple of diverse gentlemen who don't bother paying, who don't have a bus pass or anything, and the bus driver, he might be, let's say, 60 years. Like bus drivers are usually like older chaps, like 60 years old. They're not looking to get into a fight with a bunch of like young, diverse men.
No, why should they? Why should they? And we all know if they did get into a fight, Mitch, that probably they'd be in the wrong as far as the anti-British cops were concerned.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
it's just one. Yeah, it's just one of the things where So yeah, and so yeah, about and also I think that part of London that Robert James was going from station for, it's one of those areas where if you're what basically it's only really going to be the white people going through that station because of course it's where like the actual people who work in London have to go for that
Yeah,
station if they
yeah,
if they commute to work. So that's what and Jim probably did that deliberately because he knew that if he were to go up to let's say somewhere like Lewisham or Whitechapel and try and bollock people for not paying the tube fares, he'd get his head pasted in.
yep,
It's
100%. No doubt, you guys will have seen, kind of related to what we're talking about.
I was going to
foreigners
say.
are sorry, I carry on.
So I was going to say, second that. One of the pubs, I don't go to it because it's like a pub. I don't usually go to it, and it has bouncers. I've been in a few times, but it has bouncers. It's one of the only pubs I know that actually that has bouncers outside. Most most of the time now, particularly on like Friday night, Saturday night, that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the times I was going past there, I saw it was a police van just parked around the corner, and the police in front of it. It was on this roundabout, and there was these two blacks who were African, because all the blacks that they're from like former Rhodesia or there and there or South Africa, and they were obviously getting in an argument with one of the bouncers. The police were there, and they were pushing and shoving the bouncer, like proper pushing them, like physically hands on, pushed him and everything. The police just were like, calm down, because I was just walking. I was on the pavement, sort of coming around, sort of walked around it. But I just thought, in that instance, I just thought to myself, if I did that, or if any like local did that, the police would just have you done for assault.
Yeah, 100%.
I was sort of just surprised that they even allowed them to just walk away.
Yep, doesn't really surprise me at all. I was just going to mention before we move on to another subject that kind of related to the Cummings interview and what have you. It was announced in one of the newspapers that foreign-born people are now claiming £1 billion a month in benefits in Britain. £1 billion a month. And this is just people who are born overseas. This is not like first and second generation immigrants or anything like that at all. Just people who were born overseas. £1 billion a month. And in 2 months, that completely wipes out the money that the Labour Party said they would save by cutting the winter fuel allowance to little old ladies and little old guys in Britain.
Well, the one argument that liberals and people who've been in favour of open borders in this country and in other countries, but in this country as well, have argued is that GDP growth, and also the fact that they will work in services that in British people won't work in, and it produces jobs and economic growth and all that. And of course, that's just the figures themselves, as you said, Iron Duke, and it's been known for quite a while now. Particularly if you look at an overlay map of social housing and nationality, you can see it's very, very stark. The where social housing goes, for example, which gives it a bit of clue. But yes, there is no. In fact, I think it was Callum, formerly of the Lotus Eaters, a few months ago, even put forward the figures of actually it's a huge net cost in the billions for Britain having these people here.
Yep, it is, without a doubt. So many of them don't contribute at all, and in fact are a drain on the taxpayers of Britain.
And it's kind of obvious because from the start, because if they're in low-paying jobs, they'll pay national insurance, but they probably won't earn enough to pay tax. But they all live in multi-occupational properties, and so that's how that's how they sort of get round sort of rent and everything. And the trouble is, again, one of the biggest enemies of Britain are landlords who, it's the landlords that encourage this, and also it's companies who seek foreign labor. I mean, this is the two enemies of this country.
Yeah,
It's not talked about enough,
I
really.
totally agree with you. Mitch, did you have final things on this?
I was just say, it's like even like the high skilled immigration must tell us, like the nurses and the doctors. Well, 26% of our doctors come from overseas, and yet they make up 80% of all malpractice cases. I mean, NHS. So you just sit there thinking, even not
I've seen that.
high skilled, even the high skilled migration was supposedly getting. It's just and I think Atom mentioned it like a while back, where he said because the thing was back in New Labour days, a lot of the foreign staff we were getting from the NHS was actually higher skilled, let's say, staff. Let's say like Finnish au pairs, like I don't know, let's say Finnish women studying over here, and they work for the NHS. However, Diane Abbott complained that we were discriminating against West Indians in doing so. So we had to stop hiring Europeans and instead just hire a load of Nigerians and Pakistanis in the NHS from that point onward.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. I would just like to thank Gerin, who has kindly sent us $5 US, and his message is simply hello. So thanks for the $5 US, Gerin. And just to point out to people in the chat, if you want to support the channel or ask us a super chat question, which we will do our best to answer towards the end of the stream, you can do so via Entropy, and that is pinned at the top of the chat, the link. AI, did you have a first subject for this evening?
Yeah, I have actually. I've got so my first subject is the sort of the state of this I say quote unquote right wing commentators, the influencers who dominate right wing discourse in Normieville, particularly in Normieville, but also filters to us a bit as well. And it sort of actually comes down to the recent performance of Jordan Peterson on a YouTube channel called Jubilee, where originally, and there's been actually a bit of controversy around the title of that. And the other one is Charlie Kirk when he went to Cambridge and took part in the debate there. But particularly with Jordan Peterson, the Jubilee title was titled "One Christian Against 20 Atheists." Since the controversy, and I'll get onto that, what triggered that, but it's now been titled Jordan Peterson against 20 Atheists. And as I watched the Jordan Peterson stuff and also a bit of the Charlie Kirk bit, and few of the people that Jordan Peterson came up against, he made some points. I mean, the smug liberal atheists just look smug and they didn't really have anything. But there was this one young man, and they're all American, by the way, who came up and this is where Peterson really made a complete tit of himself. Sat down and basically went through these sort of like quick answer questions to sort of do a catch it. But he actually got Peterson calling because he said, "Are you a Christian?" And Peterson refused to answer, and he said, "Well, I don't see how that's any relevant." And he then reminded Peterson and the others that this title is a Christian against 20 atheists, and sort of tried to reiterate that point. And it actually did, you know, and then the final sort of, you know, the mic drop bit for, I guess, for the young liberal atheist is, well, at least I am something. And he said to Peterson, "You're really nothing." And, you know, behind the smugness and bravado, there was actually a point there. And the same applies for Charlie Kirk as well, because while he pretends to be the defender in Cambridge of European civilization, his main, you know, spiritual devotion is to that of Israel through um, a heretical evangelical obsession with you know, biblical interpretation of having you know, a set of people in the Holy Land to trigger the end times, or whatever the justification is. And what it demonstrates to me on those both occasions is effectively the right is in the mainstream right is no longer cool. It's sort of reversing that 2015 pre-Trump, sort of Trump era of like this intellectual, probably a time where they were a bit dynamic. Though I don't think Charlie Kirk was so dynamic, but where you did have people who would go on to like these university campuses and do these debates. People like, even like Milo, where he was a bit of a provocateur, but he, you know, behind all like the stage stuff, there was a few interesting bits that he would come up with. And that's of course how Sargon of Akkad sort of came into being as well. But that sort of intellectualism on the right has completely evaporated in my mind. And you know, when the kid said you're really nothing, I mean, that is true. That he wasn't, you know, he doesn't describe himself as a Christian. It's kind of like, well, why were you taking that sort of space? I mean, at least the atheist kid we know is an atheist. We know what he is. I mean, I view that he's wrong, and his outlook is completely perverse and backward, and lacks any transcendental vigor about it. But at least you could say, well, that's what he believes. And a lot of these right-wing figures don't even believe. It's like they don't even believe the things they're peddling. And this way, can I say peddling? They do come across as con artists. And you know, people say that he was picking for a fight. Well, that's true, but at the end of the day, the title was One Christian versus an Atheist, and if he couldn't say, you know, to the smug atheist, yes, I'm a Christian, all he had to say was, yes, I'm a Christian. I mean, I'm sure he would have used, you know, the other kid would have used some other mental trap to do anything, but he made himself look like a complete clown, and he makes himself look quite disingenuous. And you know, Charlie Kirk himself, you know, he was doing this. I mean, a lot of the debate stuff was around, you know, Gaza and stuff like that. And you know, it's bad when like the Corbynista lefty types look more reasonable than what what you're peddling. And so, I mean, that's my thought on this. People may disagree, but it's something I've noticed, and I think a few other people have started to notice as well, that these people, these sort of the sort of online right-wing sort of sphere that's had a bit of money and backing behind it, just turned to complete clowns. I mean, I would say Lawrence Fox is probably the best prime example of that. Calvin Robinson, Conning, as Evelyn Glass has put it, they are there just to, I mean, it's like they're sucking out any intellectual value or interest in any subject. It's like
Yeah,
the
look,
ultimate time
I
waster.
think you're right, AI. I mean, I thought Peterson's been an idiot for years now. You know, this is not a new thing with Jordan Peterson. Same thing with Charlie Kirk. I mean, you know, I mean, you're entirely correct, of course, about the country in the Middle East that he basically gives a shit about. And to some degree, that's true of Peterson as well, I think. And I think if Ola Sunglasses is correct, they are containment organizations, and they are. You know, you look at the likes of, what are those two guys called, Mitch, you'll know, or Aaron, the guy who's the son of the Russian oligarch and the
Konstantin Kissin and
yeah,
Costa.
those two. Yeah, those two. Plenty of money. Don't know who gives them their money, but somebody does. And they don't speak. They don't speak for me. I'm pretty sure they don't speak for anyone on this panel.
Kissin he's sort of centered himself around the trigonometry. That's it. Trigonometry.
That's it. Yeah, trigonometry.
They've positioned themselves as as the like the right in British politics, but they've never actually even described themselves as right wing. They've always described themselves as liberals. The type of people where I didn't leave the left left me sort of people.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, they're very much that sort of people. Mitch, what's your view on the stuff that I was talking about here?
I never bothered. I haven't listened to Jordan Peterson now. I just saw a small snippet where, like, I mean, that's kind of like where I'm at with religion, where it's like, I don't know, let's say I might personally call myself a Christian, but I've only read some of the gospel, but that's what Jordan Peterson should have done. But then again, there was also that debate where he was against Zizek, and Zizek just won because, say what you were a bit Slavoj, but Slavoj actually knows what he's talking about in terms of Marxism. Like, he studied it for 3 years, and yeah, Marxism. Everyone saying should be anti-Marxist, but someone like Slavoj, he's read it for years. Whereas you have Peterson, who never bothered to. He had some notes apparently, but just ran his notes on the very day of the debate. So it was even Peterson, in midst of that debate, arguing against Marxism, was taking it half-heartedly at best. So I'm looking at this whole situation with Jordan Peterson and go, yeah, I mean, there are a couple of guys in the Worcester Club as well who are arguing that they like Jordan Peterson, whereas I never understood why people still like Peterson. I mean, you can't really say as a role model anymore because, I mean, his daughter dated Andrew Tate. He is on so many drugs for, depression, I believe it was, because he's been telling young men for ages, do this or either so you don't get depressed, but he himself looks like he doesn't follow his own advice. And he just gets trounced in debates all the time because he just strikes you as a guy who has been over promoted far beyond where his intelligence.
Yeah, these people are they all get their funding from somewhere, and it's always usually a bit of a mystery where that funding comes from. Aaron, what's your view on this before we go back to AI?
Well, with Peterson, I have always found he sort of he did a series on sort of analysing the Bible, which I still think is reasonably good for anybody who's interested in that sort of thing. But beyond that, I was always he always seemed like a lightweight. And when it comes to people like Lawrence Fox or Calvin Robinson, they were always seemed strange to me. And Charlie Kirk was just an identikit Bush-era Republican who had a few views that were out of step with Bush-era Republicans, but that was it. So what's happened to them now doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just wondering, Black Pigeon Pilled in the chat is saying all this strikes me as gatekeepers from GB News through to Sargon and Lawrence Fox. I'm not sure I would say Sargon was a gatekeeper. I mean, maybe, I'm going to ask you blokes what you think about Sargon. Lawrence Fox, yeah, GB News, certainly. But I'm not sure if I would say that was true of Lawrence Fox. Of Sargon.
I'd say Sargon, he's become a bit retarded lately. Like he went to university to study philosophy, and he's been coming up with some really god awful takes. Like there was
Oh,
one
look,
time where he was.
I've always thought that Sargon is still basically a liberal. I don't think he's ever stopped being a liberal, and to me, that's an issue because liberalism is not going to save us. But I don't think he's containment in the same way that trigonometry is, or Jordan Peterson obviously is, or Charlie Kirk obviously is. You know, I don't think Sargon is quite as bad as those sorts, but I'll pass it over to the panel, and you guys can say what you think.
I'd agree with you, Duke. I don't think he's a gatekeeper. In fact, everyone's sunglasses has got it right. I think he says that Sargon is more of a gateway than the gatekeeper. And if you look at the people who have left the low seasons over the past couple of years, as far as I can tell, for the most part, it's been an amicable parting. They've gone off to do better things. So if you look at the various people, I think there was some stuff going on with Connor Tomlinson. With the other stuff like Callum and people like Josh, they just seem to they seem amicable and they've gone off to do bigger things. And so Sargon, and particularly overseas, seems more like a good way for people on the right who are outside the containment right to get a good public platform and then build up their own platform. Right.
Yeah, I will say that there's a.
Yeah.
I know I've one councillor who formed near me who listens to Lotus Eaters. So there are people in the form who are council at the council level who listen to Lotus Eaters. I don't know how much these days. I've one example I'm thinking of, but yeah, there are people like who are of that sphere who are doing well within reform.
I don't think. I also agree with Aaron Hook and Mitch and Iron Duke. I don't think he's. I don't think he's taken the money to put. I don't think he's like. You can usually tell if someone is like proper containment because they go through the motions of undying support for this group, strong on the counter jihad stuff. Sargon, in some areas he is, but at the same time he does like bring it back to, not to that sort of levels that you see with like say Tommy Robinson or people like that. And also
I was just going to say, Tommy Robinson, who was mentioned by someone in the chat earlier. I mean, look at who supports Tommy Robinson. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not in favour of the government continually putting Tommy Robinson in prison. I'm not. This is ridiculous behaviour, and it makes Britain look ridiculous to people around the world. But when you look at the likes of Rebel and what have you, who support Tommy, and Tommy's quite happy to go over to Israel and say how wonderful that place is. You've got to wonder, it does make you wonder. It really does.
Yeah, I mean, there was an old interview with Nick Griffin years ago. I think it was with Jolly Heretic, and he basically said that when he was leader of the BNP, he was approached and said, "Listen, if you say you support this group and support this, more avenues will open up to you in the party." That's what he was told, and he said no. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if you support one side over the other sort of thing. There's some kickbacks and benefits involved. I don't think Sargon has that because for one reason he has people on Lotus Eaters, or he's affiliated with people maybe people like AA, people who have been critical of things that containment rights are never critical of. He has them in and around his orbit, and he'll have them on Lotus Eaters.
Yes.
He'll have Zionist people on loyalty seaters as well, but he'll have critics as well. If he was paid and bought, I think he wouldn't even dare have them on.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't disagree. I think
but
you're
he's
probably
not.
right.
But he's not like, he hasn't crossed over into that sphere. Because at the end of the day, he wants to make money off the lotus eaters, and he wants to expand on that. And if you go onto like the dark side of the right, you can't. Well, if you're on the dark side of the right, you can't go on the GB News show, can you? And things like that. So, and he apparently, I think I've seen it. He's been on GB News a couple times now. Carl. He's had like
Yeah,
two
look, I think he deliberately, as you said, he deliberately tries to stay more or less mainstream. But I also don't think he's gone over to. Well, you see, I would call the dark side probably. I don't think when I say the dark side, I don't mean what many people mean. I mean, I don't think he's gone over to the pro-Israel lobby too much. So so.
Yeah, the thing about Carl was like because he used to preach the whole liberal individualism, or he used to like be massively anti-group identity type. And whenever someone tried to do a gotcha by saying, "Oh, do you apply this logic to Israel and like Judaism?" and they would just say, "Yeah," like so he was consistent on that. So I don't buy this idea that he was containment, or at least if he was containment, So, well, basically. Basically, he's not like. I mean, he might be containment in his own way, but he does it like in a way where he's not paid. Like he's not forced.
Bought and paid for. Yes.
Yeah, paid.
Yeah.
Mitch does actually raise a very good point, and this is where Carl is more he is more in tune than anyone else on the sort of right. The people, the lotus eaters, is you've been arguing for freedom from the woke, against the woke, against identity politics, and then we're going back to 2015 2016 talking points here, where people aren't treated against sort of like diversity, inclusion, like the worship of like the DI higher, the black woman, all that sort of stuff. And people like Charlie Kirk, I presume, has been arguing that. Jordan Peterson made his big hit on that against the woke stuff. This sort of a dogmatic obsession with supporting these people, this minority group against the majority. And where they've fallen over themselves now is they are actually, because of this conflict since last year, it means that they've had to actually portray some of their principles for this one group and justify it as an exception. And that, I think, that's where people, and where I think it was Evelyn's sunglasses before, where he said young people are not putting up with it because they actually see the I don't want to say the hypocrisy, but because I know that's a sort of banded around term, and it has little value, but they actually do see the hypocrisy in that regard.
Especially with the lack of fairness.
Yeah, and lack of fairness and the effect of it. And
yeah, I mean, look, Evola Sunglasses is saying Sargon has to be careful not to lose his YouTube channel. Tell me about it, Evola Sunglasses. Don't you think I have to be careful not to lose my YouTube channel? I mean, all right, they're going to take a lot more notice of Sargon because it's a much bigger channel. But anyone on YouTube has to be quite careful what you say. You do. Sorry.
Well, obviously, the tactics that are used against people on the right, especially because all of us have anonymous accounts, is of course the threat of doxing.
Yeah, and that's something I want to talk about in a bit after Aaron has his portion. But yes, so we'll come back to that one, AI, in a little while. So did you have any final thoughts on this before we move on to the next subject, AI?
No, I mean, I fear that part of the woke stuff was effectively left. Any sort of people on the left who were engaging in I don't want to say critical thinking, because they don't critically think, but engaging in some sort of intellectual sort of behavior and everything during the woke periods. During the woke period, that was thrown out the window, and it just became just pure mob mentality, violent behavior, and what have you. And that's where people on the right did especially on the online stuff, gained, because that was that's where you had that sort of shift. And with I just fear that I fear that the left will get their mojo back again at the expense of all these people who crowd the space, and that's because of course one thing
but
you
they
notice.
are in.
Sorry,
They are increasingly recognised for what they are, though.
they are, but
most people know what trigonometry is these days.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about like the more like the Charlie Kirks of this world. What's it called? Turning Point USA, Turning Point UK. That sort of crowd.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Yeah, trigonometry. And I know. And the thing there is, the thing there is, and those people never acknowledge people. Jordan Peterson never acknowledged people to their own right. And this is what I hate about the framing, that in their mind they are the right and the left is some like Charlie Kirk. He usually goes to universities is because he can only get away with his debating tactics with a underdeveloped 18, 17, 18-year-old's brain.
Very, very much like Ben Shapiro, for example.
Yeah, they need to go after children, and effectively, in my mind, intellectual children, is because their ideas don't stand up to any like real world scrutiny.
Fair
Especially when their argument for military action is, this one book from a couple thousand years ago promises this group this bit of land. It's like, well, yeah.
Yeah, no, I do see what you're saying entirely.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my final thoughts.
Aaron, did you have the first subject for this evening?
Yeah, this is. I've recently been. I watch a lot of sort of Labour Party podcasts, so things like New Statesman, and they've been talking about the possibility of Starmer being removed and replaced by there's a couple of possible people to replace him. One of them is which is I think most likely is Angela Rayner, who would be the most likely candidate if they could get rid of Starmer. But also they suggested Ed Miliband returning as leader, and I think this is sort of the white pill for people in Britain to understand that Labour really is at the end of it. This really is like the Liberals at the outbreak of the First World War, where they are not going to be the party of government after this. This is the last Labour government probably in British history, at least in the Labour Party in this form. One thing I would say about the idea of getting rid of Starmer is I don't think Labour will actually get rid of him, because the Labour Party, for reasons I don't understand, cannot, when their leaders are in danger, get rid of them. They have no problem in attempting to get rid of them, but they never succeed in doing so. And the only time they've ever done it was in 1931 with Ramsay MacDonald. That was when he formed the coalition with the Conservatives. Outside of that, I doubt Starmer will get removed, but I have no doubt there will be an attempt to remove him between now and the next general election. Well, that's me finished.
Mitch, AI, what do you think about that subject, guys?
I think it's possible. Yeah, I can see that happening because he is a. I actually think I think, as Cummings said, Badenoch will be removed before this year ends. I think. I mean, they're going to put. I think they're going to put Generic in. All things are pointing that way. I mean, his little stunt, as you said the other day, with the fairs and getting tough on all that sort of stuff. When it comes to Starmer, yeah, he's the all the polling shows that he is not doing well against reform. And the problem is, Farage's strength is in campaigning mode and in studio debates. And if he refuses a debate with Farage at the next general election, it will be a win for Farage. And if he, I think that's what I think. If I remember last time, I think, did he refuse to do a debate with Farage in 24?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So that won't work out. It wouldn't really work out this time round. So yeah, I can. This is the man who's never had a dream, never dreamed, never doesn't have a favorite novel, has nothing. Just like tumbleweeds up in that lawyer-ridden human rights mind of his.
Yeah,
So
he's a horrible man. I mean, he hasn't he always even said he doesn't have internal debates. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
That is, no wonder people call him a robot or an android. Yeah. Mitch, anything to say about this? I know you're sort of involved with reform and what have you.
Yeah, I also I don't know if anyone else has watched that when Matt Goodwin went on again on Peter McCormack's show where Matt Goodwin was asked, "Oh, what do you think of Robert Jenrick?" And he basically said, "Well, he doesn't think Jenrick is fully genuine, or he doesn't believe that Jenrick will ever be in a position to supplant Farage on the right, because you got to factor that first of all, the Tories are busted flush anyway. Like their brand is dead. I don't see. Yeah, so for example, I believe like in Norfolk, the Tories are having problems filling in like council wards for next year. Loads of local elections, which you got to factor that's Norfolk. That's peak. That's meant to be peak Toryland, and yet they can't find enough candidates or people to volunteer for them. So I think this time next year, the Tory party will really be confirmed dead because, and as like I think even if they do get rid of Kemi Badenoch, I just don't see the Tories winning. Like around my neck of the woods, at least, no one no one really puts any stock in the Tories these days. I mean, you've got, for example, Kemi Badenoch. I mean, there are people around me who you have to be reminding them that it's Kemi Badenoch not in charge, not Robert Jenrick. That's kind of like the state of play with the Tories. Like, yeah, Jenrick is doing more than Kemi Badenoch. You've got the Tories in free fall to a point where I won't be surprised if they'll get fewer than 50 seats in the next election. You've got the Labour Party. I don't see the Labour Party giving it a star for the simple fact that they're completely bereft of talent. Like the entire party is just lobotomized. I don't see any win. I mean, there was one guy, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, who was saying, "Oh well, if Angela Rayner becomes leader, that'll actually be a position where you should leave the country because apparently her husband is very deeply involved with Hot Not Hate, and he's been banging the drum apparently for tightening up some of the speech laws." So it's very much one of the things where on one hand, I don't think we'll get rid of Keir Starmer because Labour. I mean, I mean, I've, the only time I've heard of like Labour getting rid of a leader was Howard Wilson. And that was because he was sick with cancer. So unless Keir Starmer goes with a bad case of cancer or something, I don't see them replacing him. And you're going to see Labour just get absolutely trounced in the next general election. Like the way we're going, we're going to get a Reform majority in Parliament in the next election.
Could happen, Mitch. Yeah, certainly could happen. I hope it does. I also hope they're effective if it does happen. Someone in the chat was saying, is it time to infiltrate and take over the Tory party? We've spoken about this on this stream on several occasions, and you can't do it. You cannot take over the Conservative Party. The checks on candidates and the way candidates are selected, it is impossible to do. It really is. And the best thing that could possibly happen to the Conservative Party is for it to die. I'm sorry, but that's my absolute opinion. And I don't care who is running it. You know, Jenrick was in the last government that was in power for years and didn't do a damn thing. Aaron, what do you say about that?
I think you could see an infiltration of the Tory party, but it would have to be after the next general election, when they have been properly defeated, when, for example, Reform has a majority. You could then see Reform infiltrating them and gradually taking over, and then formally annexing the Tory party. But that would take about a decade. So you could see the Tory party infiltrated over the 2030s, but not at the moment. To be, it's got to suffer a sort of near extinction election defeat for the infiltration to have any chance of success.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Someone in the chat asked if we're going to talk about Boris's new kid. Didn't even know Boris had a new kid, to be honest, but whatever. And I think Boris is irrelevant, frankly. Boris is not even what anyone calls him outside of politics. It's Alexander to his family. And the fact that he has a fake surname, to me, says everything you need to know about the guy. But yeah, we've spoken about infiltrating the Conservative Party on this stream many times. And, there are people who are involved with this channel who have been Conservative Party members in the past. And at the moment, as Aaron said, it's just pointless. If they were virtually...
councillor.
Sorry,
I just said I ran as a councillor several years ago.
There we go.
Years and years ago, yeah. And it's corrupted. I came to this conclusion over the long period that actually the Conservative Party is probably the biggest force by far to anti-British thought than any like far left lunatic. I honestly believe that. I do believe the Conservative Party as an institution is probably the ultimate enemy for British civilization. They just can't help themselves. They just cannot help themselves. And as Morgoth said, when he was on this stream with us, we basically have to burn the whole place down on an institutional level and salt the earth for it never to be resurrected again. And it needs to be really confided to history as just like this, it needs to be confided to this history as just betrayal and what happens when the betrayer of empires. That'd be a good title for them, the betrayer of empires.
Yes, I think it would be. Look, like I said, I think Aaron Hook is entirely correct when he says that the Conservative Party have got to be virtually destroyed, basically. And unless that happens, nothing will change in the Conservative Party. And as I said, with Jenrick, he was a member of the last government. So why would he be so different now? Why would he be so different now? I don't see any reason for that. Someone's also asking, is Farage backed by certain groups in the Middle East? I don't particularly think he is. I have my issues with Nigel Farage and the leadership of the Reform Party. I don't like Zia Youssef at all. But, people have different opinions. I know Mitch doesn't totally agree with that.
It is interesting because that particular group, that lobby, have been trying to get Tommy Robinson and friends in reform for some time now, and Farage has resisted. In fact, he had a spat with a public spat with Elon Musk over it. So yeah, I still don't know what to make of that, but hey.
I will say, like, with that, I mean, I remember, I think it was like October, or the anniversary of October 7th, where Farage was like, "Oh, we back Israel," but other than that, he hadn't talked about Israel and Palestine. He hasn't really talked about it. I think there was one time back in like 2017 where it was an LBC, and he said, "Oh yeah, that particular lobby dominates the Republican Party," and he got in trouble for saying that. So I always took Farage as, well, the closest thing he does is he keeps saying the phrase Judeo-Christian. That's the most boomerish Americanized phrase he says. But in terms of the whole Israel thing, he doesn't really talk about them. If anything, like, I mean, you talk to people in reform, and it's just like a lot of people are basically of the opinion of, "Oh, well, they don't really care." They're just like, "Oh, well, if Israel wants to bomb that place, the kingdom come, then so be it," because it's not like Israel was unprovoked or anything, but at the same time, they don't really think about it. That's generally what your average reform guy is like. They just like, they don't really think about it as well. Like, so I don't see that particular lobby is dominating the Reform Party, whereas
It's not as big an issue in Britain, Mitch. We get viewers from all over the world, and we get a number of viewers from the USA and Canada and what have you. And just to American viewers, I would say that the Israel issue is not as big in Britain as it is in the USA. It isn't.
Yeah, I would say that
it's not such a big issue. I'm not saying at all that I'm a huge supporter of Israel, because I'm not. My position on the Middle East is I just want Britain to stay out of the wars there. I don't care. Like, when I look at the Palestine-Israel thing, I'm just entirely neutral. I don't care. Right? If they want to get their own people killed, that's their business. But I don't want to see Britain involved in those bloody wars. Sorry, carry on, Mitch.
I will say, with the Conservative Party seems to be more into that lobby, because Kemi Badenoch, she was stupid enough to say, "Oh yeah, Ukraine and Israel are fighting proxy wars on our behalf," and you just sit there thinking, I mean, first of all, yeah, and you got the Russian embassy, for example, playing that out as going, "Oh yeah, this is 100% proof that of Ukraine being a proxy," which it's just like, yeah. I think she said that back on Sunday with, wow, what's his name, the black guy, Trevor Phillips. Yeah, that particular lobby, it's more of a conservative thing rather than reform, because Farage just doesn't really talk about that issue. It's not really big, it's not really a big issue. I mean, the one issue he's talked about, which I don't think he should have died on this hill, is him talking about abortion. But then again, his position on abortion was basically logically the same. Well, look, we can save babies prematurely at 22 weeks, so why do we have abortion at 24? That was basically what he said. However,
I disagree
the
with
head,
that.
yeah, it's not really disagreeable when you read it. It's just the problem is, this is an issue which, like in America, it can mobilize young women.
Because there's no more selfish group than young women, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I wouldn't want Farage to all of a sudden make abortion a battlefield issue when the main issue is stuff like the boss wave and
the only thing I'd say, Mitch, is that the lefty young women, who are the ones who would get mobilised by that, are not going to vote for a Farage anyway. So,
No, but you're going to have a situation where, let's say, young women who are usually apolitical, they might go, oh, they might, it's like that was the main fear during the US election, which was that because a lot of the GOP had talked about abortion for years beforehand, it might mobilize a lot of usually apolitical young women to vote Democrat.
Yeah, I don't think it happened as much as they were worried it would, though. And I mean, Farage is not talking about even restricting abortion. He's just talking about reducing how long they can do it for, which to me seems a perfectly reasonable position. And I don't understand any woman who can't find out she's pregnant within 3 months, frankly. You know? If she can't find out she's pregnant within 3 months, then she's doing something wrong, you know? But yeah, I don't see a lot of evidence that Farage is particularly zog-pilled. Maybe Jenrick and some of the Conservatives, yes, certainly, but then we're not in favour of Jenrick or the Conservatives. So that's my view on that. But I mean, I would just say to Aaron's original point, can you imagine Angela Rayner being Prime Minister? I mean, you know, would it be worse than Starmer? Probably not. But, you know, the fact that somebody like Rayner could become Prime Minister is just, how far have we sunk, for God's sake? You know, it's just crazy.
I've got to say, Duke, somebody who does follow politics to a degree as the theatre of the absurd, watching Angela Rayner becoming Prime Minister would be the epitome of the UK.
Oh yeah, it would. I mean, we've sunk a hell of a long way, you know, from a once mighty empire into a place that Angela Rayner might run. I mean, I wouldn't really want my child to be educated by Angela Rayner if he was in a primary school, you know.
No.
And there are all too many Angela Rayner-like female teachers in British primary schools, you know. Yeah, I don't know.
Can I just respond to something in the chat?
Yeah, mate, of course you can.
Sonny Jim has previously mentioned that Starmer is in the commentary is at least Fabian Society adjacent. And that's not true. Starmer is a fully fledged member of the Fabian Society. In fact, every Labour Prime Minister this country has had, 6 of the 7 Labour Prime Ministers we've had in this country, including Starmer, have been Fabian members. And also, just one more to Jim, there's Fabian Society. Fabian Socialism is not Trotskyism. It's its own form of unpleasantness. It's very much homegrown British unpleasantness. Just to respond there.
Yeah, they have that famous window in their head office with the wolf in sheep's clothing, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
But they,
I thought Starmer was probably a member of the Fabian Society. It doesn't really surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Lothar Sheffield is saying that Conscious Caracal, Ernst Van Zyl, seems like a nice bloke. Yeah, I really like Ernst. If you want to know what's going on in South Africa, good guy to follow. I'd actually really like to have him on this stream at some point if I can work it out, time differences and so on. But yeah, Ernst is really good. Do follow Conscious Caracal on YouTube. He's excellent. Okay. So did you have any final thoughts on that since you brought it up, Aaron?
Not really. I should say that probably just as reference to this. I know that Hitman is going to do a live stream sometime in the week about the rise of the Labour Party, and that will mention the involvement of the Fabian Society if anybody's interested in that.
Hitman is excellent, by the way. He's been on this stream a number of times. Will be again in the future, I hope. I sent him a link for this evening, I think. Although I was rushed sending out links this evening. But Hitman's a good chap, and do go and check him out on YouTube.
Yeah, I would say within the Labour Party, they've got the same curse as the Eastern Roman Empire, where they've started and ended by guys who have the same first name. So you got Constantinople, founded by Constantine, and then conquered under the reign of another Constantine. And then you got this Labour Party, where created by a guy called Keir, and ended by a guy also called Keir.
Yes. Yeah. Very
Yeah, true. Like all founded by Romulus, and then the last Western emperor in Italy was from Italy was Romulus Augustus as well. So yeah, funny that.
Sonny Jim is saying in the chat that FS claims that Starmer isn't a member. I'm not sure who FS is. Who's FS?
That's the Fabian Society. I mean,
They claim he's not a member.
yeah, they may claim that, but I think he's been a member since the 1990s or 1980s. I mean, he's been involved with them. In fact, he in 2021 he published his sort of essay on Starmerism in through the Fabian Society. So they might be trying to cover their track, shall we say, given that in the past
he behaves like a member of the Fabian Society and speaks like a member of the Fabian Society. So
yeah, and also they might be just covering their tracks because they also gave us via the Fabian Society, New Labour came into the Labour Party, so they probably are a bit worried about having their brand associated with two catastrophic failures in terms of British politics.
Yeah. Wood Pit 420 is saying I should get Robert Doigan on as well. I like him. He's the guy involved with the Cape Independence movement, I believe. As quite often streamed with Conscious Caracal. Another good South African guy. Totally agree. All right. I suppose we should talk about what happened to Morgoth. Since he has broken his own silence about it, he did a Substack post about it. Morgoth, for anyone in the chat who doesn't know, has been on this stream several occasions, and I did actually ask him if he wanted to come on this evening, but he was doing other things. Hopefully we'll have him on again at some point when he's free. Yeah, he was doxed by the vile Hope Not Hate people. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I will say, like, the picture they had of him, it's what we all thought he would look like. But he just looks like standard North FC.
Yep.
I mean, they've been gunning for him for years now. I hope not hate, especially in like their, he's been like the sort of white whale. And I think I read Morgoth's Substack article on this, and what's incredible.
Incidentally, guys, can I just say something? Sorry, if people in the chat, if I see anyone in the chat doxing Morgoth or anyone else, you will be banned. Right? We don't do that on this channel. So if I see anyone in the chat doing it, you will be banned from this channel permanently.
Well, somebody in chat, I can see somebody in chat's already done it, and I recommend they actually delete that comment there if they can, or if that's removed.
I've already done that.
Okay. Yeah. So I think what's pretty egregious is how they've basically hunted him down, using like his former address, his former neighbors, friends, and just harassing just like ordinary people. Like I think he described it as like some proper like East German Stasi tactics, and it effectively in this country, Hope Not Hate inquisitors operate outside the law. GDPR doesn't apply to them. Harassment doesn't apply to them. I mean, these people are just literally they just make up the rules for themselves because they have the power of the state behind them. And
well, they're government funded. Let's be clear, especially to people who are not actually British. Hope Not Hate are government funded.
They're government funded.
They're an NGO. They're an extreme left wing NGO, but they are paid for in part by the British government.
Yeah, they're government funded, and of course it leads to the most obvious thing. Like, what threat does Morgoth actually like? he's not like a leader of a band. He's not a leader of he's just a voice which has a Substack. He's been around for like 2010. He's been around a long time, and the fact that he is considered to them such a threat, it's laughable because he's not. I mean, they straight up lied about stuff that he said.
Yes.
I mean,
they did.
Morgoth is the most sensible person. I remember when all that stuff with Southport was kicking off, nearly a year ago now.
Morgoth's advice was to stay out of it.
Yeah, he said his advice was basically stay out of it. There was a lot of disinformation, and as we found out, a lot of them were people from Pakistan and India. The slop accounts of Pakistan and India were posting false information, and that innocent people will be caught up into it. And he said, stay out of this because this is sort of turning into like a government psyop and everything, which it did turn into, as we saw with the newspapers, and I've covered it on a stream at the time, how that played out. But yeah, I mean, it's but also this I remember when Hope Not Hate doxed the Iconoclast a couple of years
Yes,
ago now.
I remember that. It was a while ago. Yeah.
That did have, I believe that was even like referenced in one of the major newspapers. It was kind of like an important thing, and it had an effect. With with this of Morgoth, it apart from people, the general response is like Mitch saying, "Oh, he looks a bit like a Chad. Yeah, he looks like a North FC kind of guy. Looks like a normal guy."
Yep.
And that's about it. There hasn't been like the holy shit saw breakthrough. And it just dawned on me, like, how many leftists actually do you think know of Morgoth? Because do you think any sort of like average basic bitch leftist would have the time of day to actually go through Morgoth's Substack and read it to understand what he was about?
I don't know that they'd even understand it. It's probably a bit too complicated for most of them.
Well,
Yeah,
that's my point, though. That's my point. Most, apart from like the sort of dipshits and Hope Not Hate, I don't think your average leftist, average Workers' Party socialist type, or Green Party type, has probably ever heard of Morgoth.
I will say that with Iconoclast, and I won't be surprised if similar happened with Morgoth, where with the Iconoclast back in the 2019 election, the Labour Party were having meetings up in up in like Sunderland and Durham and Newcastle way, where they're all just like saying, "Oh yeah, the Iconoclast is pretty big YouTuber up in their neck of the woods," like because of course he's got the accent, and Labour Party were thinking he costed them like hundreds of thousands of votes through his YouTube channel over the previous couple of years. Morgoth is a bit more. I wouldn't say esoteric, but he's a bit more. He's a bit more niche compared to Iconoclast. So I'm wondering, So for example, the average leftist. I mean, unless you're someone like Aaron Bastani with a couple of brain cells to work with, I don't see the average leftist really soldiering through Morgoth's videos, trying to ascertain, where does this guy stand? Like, what does this guy mean by the hatchling, or what does this guy mean by I can't imagine the average leftist, for example, because we often invoke Morgoth's law every time something happens. I don't think the average leftist is even aware of it, because we're all aware, for example, of conquest laws.
Yeah, Morgoth is a bit more esoteric. He's a bit more philosophical than quite a lot of the people. And I think Morgoth's political position, particularly if you're going to talk about left versus right, is much harder to pin down than it is most people. I don't know whether you guys would agree with me on this. I mean, he's a nationalist. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a nationalist. He often talks about history, although not always in a very direct manner, but he often talks about history in terms of how it affects the people and that sort of stuff. But he doesn't really so much engage in the kind of day-to-day crappy politics that is most of British politics most of the time. He doesn't really do that much. And as AI was correctly saying, whenever there's been trouble in England, like during the Southport riots and what have you, Morgoth's advice has always been to stay out of it. So the idea that he's ever supported violence is a downright lie. He's never done that, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, I was going to say, it'd be like, I don't know, let's say I trying to dox Alan, and it's like Alan, most of Alan's content is largely just him talking about books and films. Because that's what Morgoth largely does. Like, he'll talk about films, and all that. Let's say he will, for example, one video of Morgoth after comes off. He made a video where he was talking about Blade Runner, and he was saying, "Oh, Blade Runner is a very good film to watch in relation to how you look at the world of today." And he it's kind of like he'll say some esoteric themes from a Blade Runner, and then just analyze the world going off that. I don't see.
I mean, look, I did a stream with Morgoth and Endeavour talking about the movie Zulu. I mean, it was just film review basically with a little bit of history. So, where Hope Not Hate get this idea that Morgoth is this bad guy? It's just lies, basically, as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, I've followed Morgoth for years now, literally years. And I've never seen him support violence or anything illegal, to be honest with you.
I think it's because more
stupidity.
I think it's because Morgoth has the ability to sum up and articulate the present state of many towns, city centres, and even villages up and down the country, particularly in the north. And he's able to do it in a way which is not too intellectual that it's off-putting to your average person. And he's good at connecting. When you listen to one of his videos or streams where he talk about rambling or what have you about over issues, it's easy to listen to. He doesn't talk fast. He doesn't come. As I said, he doesn't come across as like these other people that we talk about and who we sort of call as grifters. And one of the things, one of my criticisms of like someone maybe like Carl, for example, is because of his themes, he does have a habit of over intellectualize certain issues for the viewer.
He did a really good video AI about a very old tree he found on one of his trips around England.
Yeah.
And he was talking about this ancient tree that had stood there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And it was really good. But it wasn't something that some lefty wanker needs to get upset about. Or maybe it was, Maybe it was.
Yeah.
And Aaron, you haven't said anything. Well, I'm sorry, AI, I'll let you carry on. But Aaron, I'd like to hear your thoughts after AI has finished. Sorry, AI.
Oh no, I was just going to sort of on the final point. I think Sunny Jim and Chat summed it up. Criticize the concept without a rule of text. That's really what it comes down to it. And he's it's relatable. The things that he's said in videos about like what he is seeing, what he's even thinking, I think captures the mood of the country better than really anybody. Anybody that I know is able to put out there.
Yeah, fair enough. Aaron, what's your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I would say I wasn't surprised because the bastards always get you eventually. So the fact that they doxed him was something that was always going to happen. That said, in some ways, being doxxed now is better than being doxxed at any other time. And the fact that it actually has very little effect on your life nowadays compared to, let's say, 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. And so I don't think Morgoth will be, fortunately, too badly affected by what's going on. It would obviously be better if he hadn't been doxxed at all, but that's happened. As people said, with Morgoth, I don't know how they can accuse him of being overly controversial, being particularly controversial, because the first video of his I ever watched was one that he did on the 1970s sitcom Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, and that was not.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
So it's the idea that they would say as has been claimed that he somehow endorses violence, but he doesn't, and it's just ridiculous. And the fact they have to lie about him says that they really are clutching at straws, and that they are really at the end of sort of their really, it's the fag end of their regime control. And so in some ways you could see this as a good thing, that it just shows how lacking in power they really have. I've got to say, I know Mitch mentioned my stuff. If Hope Not had ever tried to dox me, they wouldn't have much to do, given that I'm not sure people know this, but my name on the thread is my real name, and if you go onto my channel, you see my face. So in my case, they wouldn't have much to go on with, and I'd like to see them try, put it that way, because it would be at least entertaining for me.
I totally agree with Darren Buckley. Hope Not Hater creeps. Yes, they are. Ivola's Sunglasses is mentioning Horus. Now, Horus is another friend of the channel who's been on this channel quite a few times. And I've also been on his channel doing historical stuff. Great bloke. I really like Horus. I'm hoping we'll have him on again soon. But yeah, it's as all of the panel have said, I mean, basically the stuff that Hope Not Hate came out with about Morgoth is simply a lie. You know, the only way they were able to do stuff is lie about it.
Sorry,
Which,
Andrew, I'm going to have to.
shows
I'm
you-
going to. So I'm going to have to head off now because my dog's barking to go out.
Before you do, AI, just tell people what your channel is, but I'll put the details up later.
Okay, it's AI Homeland on YouTube. Check it out. We've got some pretty good streams and videos up there.
And I'll put a link to that underneath the stream later on, guys, if you want to find AI's channel.
Thank you, everybody. See ya.
Thanks for joining, AI. Go well. You have to look after your dog first. I like all dogs and a fair number of humans, so good on AI for looking after his dog. Yeah, Mitch, any final thoughts on this?
No, I can't really think of much. I mean, as I said earlier, like, so I've got a Morgoth. He's just sort of like, standard guy from the Northeast. I mean, he looks like your uncle who goes to your wedding or something. He doesn't particularly look.
That's all. That's all I've heard people say is that he looks all right. You know, he looks like a pretty good bloke. That's the only thing I've heard people say, to be honest. So we live in a strange world. I do think that Aaron is right that these days getting doxed is not what it would have been, say, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. It's and I hope that Morgoth is in the position now where he's not. I mean, I know Morgoth has done some, the same as I have, incidentally, has done some pretty ordinary jobs in his time. You know, where that sort of thing might affect you. I hope that Morgoth is beyond that kind of stuff these days, and that this shit won't have any effect on him at all. As I say, I did invite him on this stream, but to be fair, because I had some problems with my computer earlier, I did so fairly late in the day, and he was doing something else. But I very much hope to have him back on the channel again. He's been on here about 3 times. And I hope very much to have him back on it again whenever it suits him, basically, because I'll happily always give him a platform if he wants one. But yeah, So, having talked about all that stuff, did anyone else have anything else we wanted to talk about before we close? Mitch, Aaron?
Not really.
Mitch, anything you'd like to plug, mate, if you don't have any final subject matters?
Nah, I haven't got anything to plug. Or I can't think of last subjects now.
No worries. If you've got one, just tell us. But if you come up with it before we stop, you can certainly talk about it. Aaron, would you like to plug your channel and hopefully the stream we're doing tomorrow, is it?
Yes, tomorrow. So my channel is Aaron James Hook. I cover books and films. And tomorrow at 10 p.m. British time, which I believe, Duke, is 7 a.m. your time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Half an hour later than we started today, yeah?
Yeah, and we're going to be doing a live stream sort of talk about the third book in the Aubrey and Maturin series, HMS Surprise by Patrick O'Brien, which would hopefully be the first of a number of live streams we're going to do over the coming months on particular books in the series, and also at the end of that, the very brilliant Master and Commander film.
Yep, I'm looking forward to that one, Aaron. Patrick O'Brien is certainly one of my favourite authors. I've read all the books at least twice, some of them 3 times, and there are 20 of them in the series. HMS Surprise. No, HMS Surprise was a sailing frigate, Davy 1602, and it's set during Nelson's era. So yeah. Sonny Jim is saying we had Lady of Shalott on last year. Yes, we did. Lady of Shalott's been on this channel at least twice. Sadly, no one's heard from Lady of Shalott for quite a long time. So yeah. But yeah, no, HMS Surprise was a sailing frigate. 28-gun sailing frigate, so quite a small sailing frigate, actually. And I'm looking forward to doing this stream with Aaron. We were going to do it last week, and then Aaron wasn't feeling too good last week, so he put it back for a week. We will also be back on Wednesday, by the way, same time as today, for our historical stream. Now, this week, I don't quite know what it's going to be yet, but in the future, I'm going to start planning these, or try to start planning these at least 2 weeks ahead, so I can give people a heads up of what we're going to be talking about. This week, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to work that out. But then after that, I will make firm plans for the next 2 weeks after that, if that makes any sense. But anyway, we'll do that. There will be details of AI's channel and Aaron Hook's channel in a pinned comment underneath the stream after we finish. Let me go and check if we got any more entropy chats, just in case we did. I did mention Gieran's chat earlier on. And I'll just check this because I have missed them in the past because they came through late or whatever. All right, doesn't seem to be any others, so that's fine. I will play us out with a bit of a tune if it works. Let's see if I can do it. Get there eventually.
In the merry month of May, when bees from flower to flower did hum, soldiers through the town much gay, and the villagers danced to the sound of the drum. The cobbler, he's got off his all with last, left wax and bread for powder and ball, gone with the rest to follow the drum. But Lord, he changes bodkin for a sword, go with the rest to follow the drum. Robin, he got off his plough his team and furrow just begun of country life he'd had, and now he'd go with the rest to follow the drum. Three old dames and one was lame and another deaf, and a third night on they said it was a terrible shame that they could go and follow the drum. In the merry month of May, when peace from flower to flower did hum, soldiers through the town marched gay, and the villagers danced to the sound of the drum.
And that was Follow the Drum, which is an 18th and 19th century British folk song about joining the British Army. And it comes from good friends of the channel, Patriotic Archive. If you like military and naval music, folk songs, that kind of stuff, go and check out Patriotic Archive on YouTube. Thank you very much to my guests this evening, AI, Mitch, and Aaron Hook. And we will see you on Wednesday for our Splendid Isolation history stream. And in the meantime, don't let the bastards grind you down.